Good morning. It's Virge, coming at you from Portland, Oregon, where I just got Portland bangs cut as a upcoming birthday present from my sister-in-law. Pretty stoked on that. Peter says hello. Roslyn says hello. Just a quick note. I'm reading this fantastic book, weird, that Liv told me to read. My friend, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Friend/sister, should I say. And it's another one of those books, much like Pema Chodron's Don't Bite the Hook and things like that, where it's sort of not letting life, aka expectations and the ego, like get your goat, so not being reactive, being responsive, all of these things that so many spiritual practices talk about. And I just wanted to integrate something that has been going on for me, and maybe it's something that you can relate to, because it's about finding the middle way and it's about finding balance. So as I was reading this, I was thinking about times that I have lost my shit and how I've improved on that over the past year, as far as keeping calm and not taking things so seriously, and basically just accepting what is instead of resisting and freaking the fuck out when something that you don't want to happen happens. And I think a good example for me, because this is something that would trigger me the most about almost anything, was Roslyn peeing on the seat cover in the van. And that's only happened a few times, like maybe 4 times total in the whole time I've had my van. Very unusual and circumstantial. And yet when I look back to the very first time that happened, which was actually the day before I left for the wild way home, I had been on it already, but it was the day before I left Cody, Wyoming, my hometown, which was back in April of this year. And it was at a full moon ceremony. It was the full moon in Scorpio. I was with a bunch of amazing women. It had been this magical thing. And I come back out from my van and Roslyn had peed on the seat cover. And I just fucking lost it. Like, not at her, but just anger. And this is where the integration happens, though, because also at the time, I think that was healthy. I was trying to find that balance between not directing that at her and also not repressing it. So, like, screamed into a pillow, like crying, and essentially took it personally, let it totally like throw me off all kinds of balance. And I always pronounce that word wrong. I want to say equanimity. You guys know what I'm talking about. EQUAMINITY. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And also go Google how to pronounce it, because it's so different than what I thought it was. But that state of balance, totally losing that. And I think of, the last time Roz peed in the van, which I think was back in Kansas. And although it was still a huge struggle, I just didn't, it was just so different. It was like it just didn't get me. I just accepted what was, and I went forward cleaning it up and just didn't make it this huge thing about how this is going to happen all the time and this can't happen and this can't be and blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to say, I do think that that's a big part of the path, is like learning to stay more balanced and calm and just observe in any situation. And there's a lot of that going on in The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's like ninja shit. And I just wanted to integrate it in with a book that I read that really changed my life, that I don't think I've talked to you guys about, or maybe I have. It's called The Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. The Language of Emotions. And honestly, I cannot recommend this book enough based on my own journey, because I feel like it integrates in with this the difference between spiritual bypassing and repression. And then on the outside, you get to think, oh, look how spiritually advanced I am. And actually working through and expressing what's coming up. So like I said, a good example of that was, like, I remember the first time Roslyn peed in the van, letting myself cry, letting myself scream, not directing that at her, although it was hard. And I'm sure, like, they definitely felt my anger and intensity. And I feel that I've come a long way in that. Although at the same time, it was not something where that would have been spiritual bypassing me to be like, no, everything's great. Everything's fine. I'm fine. You can like feel, no, you're not. Another example of what I'm trying to say. So it's basically practicing not taking things so seriously, accepting what is, just being there to accept whatever is coming at you in life, no matter how difficult or triggering or whatever, and listening to the emotions that are coming up because they are messengers, and also maybe writing it down or recording something about it. This has been a huge help in my life because when you don't have to do that. You could also just come back and like review it later, but just in the way of giving it time to develop context in your life so that you can see perhaps there are some lessons and takeaways that situation is trying to send to you. Let me give you an example. Back in March, someone who worked for my parents on one of our ranches absolutely lost his shit on me and literally said to me, screamed at me for at least 30 minutes. I'm not exaggerating, because he was threatened in the situation. And I admit there were things that I could have done better, but he absolutely lost it and was screaming at me just all of my like sort of deepest fears, like that I was a failure to my father, like that I was just an entitled piece of shit, like that I'd never done anything with my life. And like, I mean, someone's screaming this at me in front of other people that I cared about who were there. My dogs weren't there, notably, because I don't think they would have taken that shit. But in the moment, I remained like completely calm through all of it. We ended up hugging at the end, okay? And I'm not telling you this story because I think I have all the right answers. I think it's very contextual for you and for every person. I'm telling this story because I think it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I feel, from my perspective and what I've learned in my life experience, remaining calm in that situation and genuinely not getting worked up. Like I didn't get angry, I didn't cry. I just focused on my breath and really was like able to see with compassion. Okay, that's great. Hugging him at the end, perhaps it was contextually appropriate. I think that might have been going a little bit far. But my point is with this integration, yes, I stayed calm in that situation. That's a really good sign for my spiritual progress. For me, where I'm at, because I am not an avatar, I'm not Buddha, I'm not Jesus, I'm not to the point of being a master. Like for a master, maybe it would be okay, and then complete compassion and joy for everyone, and that's great, and not bothered by that situation. For me, where I'm at in my journey, I was spiritual bypassing a lot of emotions that I felt I wasn't allowed to feel because they would like manifest negative things, such as anger. Anger is a big one. I'll just stick with anger right now. So anger is an actual messenger that is like the sentry archetype, Sentry, like the guard who is telling you need a boundary here. And I think by like everything's a process. So eventually, yes, you'll be enlightened and maybe anger will not necessarily be something that you feel. Along the way, if you just pretend you don't feel anger and repress it and feel guilty about it and don't listen to it, you'll keep getting into situations again and again where you're not learning the lesson that it has for you. So in that situation with this man who yelled at me, great that I was able to stay calm during that. That was huge. And then in processing that, whether in the moment or after, and looking at that pattern, that occurrence in the context of my life and truly going deep into the emotions that are coming up, for me in my process, also very important to listen to that anger and set a boundary between me and that person. Not personal towards them, as in it's not because they're a bad person. It's because when I'm honest with the feelings and emotions and messages that are coming up for me, they are telling me that to take care of myself, my tender, growing, evolving self that is not completely enlightened, that is still very much in the rough of that path, I need to set a boundary with this person. that's what my anger is telling me. And I'm going to listen to my anger, and I need to notice maybe a pattern in my life where when I just pretend that, oh, I am to the spiritual point where I can do this and I don't feel anger anymore, I end up getting into situations again and again where I allow myself to be mistreated sort of in a repetitive loop where it's like, okay, well, once you get that, you are going to enter these situations differently where something like that won't happen. But does that make sense? What I'm saying is it's a balance, you guys, because I'm guessing if you're watching this, you're on the path like me. Like, we're not Buddhas yet. And negative emotions like grief, like anger, like sadness have huge messages and work to do for us, and can help us set boundaries, can help us let go, can help us be honest to let flow what needs to flow in our body as we move through this process in these seasons. And it is on that fine balance of being able to remain more and more present in the moment, being with, observing, honoring those emotions, and not getting swept away to the point where basically you lose consciousness. So I'm going to be talking about this more, I think. It's just that I feel there's a really strong balance between remaining calm, not taking things so seriously, and not reacting and just being there with challenging situations, and honoring and listening to your true emotions around those, and setting boundaries, letting go of things where they're appropriate. Like, okay, cool. I stayed calm in that situation with that person. And after that, I'm never going to let that person, I won't say never at this point in my relationship with that person, I'm not going to put myself into situations where that could ever happen again. Like, that person gets very, very, very little of my attention when I have to be around them. And I did have to be around them a lot when I was home helping my parents finish moving. And so the difference is between being like, I'm going to be all sunshiny and fake, when actually I feel a lot of anger and fear and sort of protection. And I'm going to listen to those emotions with that person. Again, I'm not being mean to this person. It's not about them being a bad person. It's about me honoring the true feelings and signs and signals to be able to progress in the process and the seasons of my life. And so, I was kind to them. It wasn't like I fully ignored them. And there was a huge boundary up with me and that person, and it felt really healthy, and it felt really not charged, as in it was just like, it was like to find that balance in a very authentic way, which at this part of the process for me and my understanding of myself and our relationship was to basically not engage, but to have consciously and kindly to myself and to this person and to just the way things are, maybe honestly is a better way to say it, to honestly, consciously choose to have a boundary. And so I'd love to hear about how that balance shows up for you, like that balance between staying calm, staying chill, staying a ninja, staying a peaceful warrior, right? Actually, you know what? I'm going to call this video that, because that's kind of what I'm saying. He doesn't talk about boundaries in this way, but the way of the peaceful warrior, because it's that balance between peace and warriorship, between taking care of the moment in front of you and taking care of yourself in the larger story of your life, and where that balance is found. And it's always changing and always evolving. I don't have all the answers. I can tell you that a book that was very, very, very awakening for me, and again, with all the books or anything I ever say to you, take what works and leave the rest. And that book is The Language of Emotions by Carla with a K McLaren. All right. You know what? I'm excited for whatever creative surprise you have in store for the world today. And if you'd like to share anything about that, that would be cool too.